I want to begin by saying that my older brother, Greg, has been my best friend for as long as I can remember. Growing up, he wasn't just a sibling, he was my guide, my protector, and my constant companion. From a young age, Greg took me under his wing, teaching me so many of the things that shaped who I am today. One of my earliest memories is of Greg teaching me how to ride a bike around the neighborhood. I was a shy kid, more cautious and hesitant, but Greg was patient with me, running alongside the bike, holding the seat steady until I was ready to balance on my own. I'll never forget the moment I finally got it right. Greg was there, cheering me on, just as proud as I was. That's just the kind of brother he was, always there to encourage and support me, pushing me to try new things, and never letting me feel like I was alone. In school, I struggled a bit with my shyness. Making friends didn't come naturally to me, but Greg was always there to bridge the gap. He introduced me to his friends, made sure I was included, and helped me navigate those early social situations that felt so overwhelming at the time. Because of him, I never felt out of place, and slowly but surely, I started to come out of my shell. Our bond was further strengthened by the countless hours we spent together after school. Every evening, you could find us out in the neighborhood, playing games, riding our bikes, or just exploring the world around us. Those were the best times, just the two of us, having fun and enjoying each other's company. What stands out to me the most is how we hardly ever fought. Sure, we had our moments like any siblings do, but they were rare and never lasted long. Out of the two of us, Greg has always been the more good-looking one, and it's something I noticed early on in my life. He naturally attracted attention from girls, no matter where he went. This was something that never seemed to bother him. In fact, he quite enjoyed it and liked how girls would come over and ask for his number. Over the years, I watched as he ended up breaking quite a few hearts along the way. But everything changed when he met Stephanie, my ex-sister-in-law. From the moment they met, it was clear that this time, Greg was the one who had fallen hard. It was different from his previous flings. This was real, deep love, and it didn't take long for them to get married and start a family. I could see how happy Stephanie made him, and honestly, it made me happy too. She wasn't just his wife, she became like a sister to me. We clicked right away, and I quickly came to love her as part of our family. The three of us, Greg, Stephanie, and I, formed a close-knit group, spending countless hours together. Whether it was having drinks, throwing parties, or just hanging out, we always had a great time. Stephanie fit right in, and I couldn't have been more thrilled to have her in our lives. Then, when I met my wife, who was at the time my girlfriend only, Chloe, I was eager to bring her into the fold. I wanted her to experience the same sense of belonging and camaraderie that I had with Greg and Stephanie. Luckily, Chloe and Stephanie hit it off immediately. They became fast friends, and it was such a relief to see how well they got along. Greg and I were both over the moon about it. Our little group had grown, and now it felt even more complete. Looking back, I never saw any issues within our group. To me, everything seemed perfect. We were all close, supportive of one another, and genuinely happy. Maybe it was because I was so caught up in the joy of it all, but I honestly never noticed any red flags. It's possible that I was too focused on the good times we were having to see anything else. That's why when Stephanie called me in tears one day while I was at work, asking to meet up with me, I knew something was seriously wrong. The urgency in her voice and the fact that she specifically asked me not to tell Greg made me even more concerned. I agreed to meet her without hesitation, knowing that whatever it was, it must have been something big. We met at a small cafe near my office. I walked in and saw Stephanie sitting there looking miserable. Her face was puffy and red, and she looked like she had been crying all night. My heart sank. I immediately went over, gave her a hug, and asked her what was going on, trying to prepare myself for whatever she was about to tell me. That's when she broke down completely, barely able to get the words out as she slowly confessed that she had caught my brother, Greg, talking to another woman who was apparently his coworker. I was stunned. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Stephanie went on to explain that she had found them exchanging inappropriate pictures with each other. They had also apparently sent each other "I love you" messages twice. I was in disbelief. I had genuinely thought Greg had turned a new leaf after meeting Stephanie, that he was committed to his family and had left his old ways behind. This revelation felt like a punch to the gut. As she spoke, I could see the pain in her eyes, and I knew this wasn't just some misunderstanding. Stephanie showed me the screenshots, and as much as I didn't want to believe it, there it was, clear as day. My brother, who I thought had changed, was back to his old ways, risking everything for the sake of an affair with his coworker. The pictures they had exchanged were so inappropriate that I felt ashamed on behalf of my brother. I asked Stephanie what she planned to do next and whether she had confronted Greg about what she had found. She shook her head, explaining that she hadn't said anything to him yet. Instead, she had made up her mind to quietly move out with their child and go to her parents' place before letting Greg know about the affair. Her voice trembled as she told me this, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She was scared of how Greg might react when he found out she knew. I tried to reassure her, telling her that Greg would never lay a finger on her. But she countered by saying that she thought she knew Greg too, and clearly, he wasn't the person she believed him to be, so she didn't want to take any more risks with him. That hit me hard. I understood her fear and her reasoning. If he could betray her like this, what else might he be capable of? It wasn't just about the affair, it was about trust, or rather, the complete shattering of it. Seeing her so vulnerable, I told her that if she needed anything at all she could call me, and I would be there to help. She nodded, still clearly shaken, and I hoped my offer of support gave her some small sense of comfort in the midst of the chaos her life had suddenly become. Then, as if everything Stephanie had already told me wasn't bad enough, she hesitated for a moment, looking as though she was weighing whether or not to say more. Finally, she took a deep breath and told me there was something else I needed to know. Her eyes avoided mine as she spoke, and I could feel a sense of dread creeping over me again. What could possibly be worse than what I just heard? Stephanie then told me that she had come across some very alarming messages exchanged between Greg and my girlfriend, Chloe, as well. My mind struggled to process what she was saying. I frowned in confusion, not quite able to believe what I was hearing. But then she showed me the screenshots, and my confusion only deepened as I looked at the evidence right in front of me. The messages between Greg and Chloe were frequent, far more so than I had ever imagined. They seemed to be talking almost daily, which was odd, to say the least. Stephanie, trying to be sensitive, pointed out that she didn't want to overstep her bounds by speaking about my relationship. However, she couldn't help but notice that despite how close she and I were, we didn't communicate nearly as often as my girlfriend and my brother did. I stared at the messages, feeling a mixture of disbelief and a growing sense of unease. I saw Chloe sending Greg various funny videos, photos of dogs, sunsets, and other random things. On the surface, these seemed harmless enough, but what troubled me was the fact that Chloe never sent me those kinds of messages. It was strange, and I couldn't help but wonder why she was sharing these moments with Greg instead of with me. Stephanie emphasized that this exchange might be completely innocent, but given what she had just learned about Greg's infidelity, she felt it was only right to bring this to my attention. She didn't want me to end up blindsided the way she had been, and I could tell that she was genuinely concerned for me. I could see where she was coming from, and as much as I wanted to believe that there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for the messages, I couldn't ignore the pit in my stomach. I thanked Stephanie for telling me, knowing how difficult it must have been for her to bring this up. I assured her that I would definitely talk to Chloe about it and get to the bottom of what was going on. As I left the cafe, my mind was racing. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, not just for Stephanie, but for myself as well. What if there was more to this? What if Greg wasn't just betraying Stephanie, but me too? I needed answers, and I knew the only way to get them was to confront Chloe and find out the truth. When I finally gathered the courage to confront Chloe about what Stephanie had told me, I approached the conversation as gently as I could. But as soon as I brought it up, her reaction was immediate and intense. She seemed almost offended that I would even think to question her about it. She called the whole thing ridiculous, and before I could even get another word in, she shoved her phone into my hands, telling me that I could go through it if I really wanted to. The situation quickly escalated, and I found myself trying to calm her down, reassuring her that I did trust her. My intention wasn't to accuse her, but simply to understand why she was sharing these videos and photos with Greg and not with me. But instead of addressing my concerns, Chloe flipped the narrative. She argued that I never appreciated things like she did and that Greg and she had more in common when it came to those interests, hence she would text him about it. She went on to assure me that she saw Greg as a big brother, just like I did, and insisted that she would never cross any lines. The way she put it, it all sounded so reasonable, and in the heat of the moment, I started to feel guilty for even bringing it up. The last thing I wanted was to seem like I didn't trust her or that I was being paranoid. So, I ended up apologizing to her instead, feeling bad for having doubted her in the first place. But now, looking back on that conversation, I realized that Chloe was probably gaslighting me the entire time. I wish I hadn't let her talk me out of my instincts. I should have seen the red flags for what they were, but instead, I let myself be convinced that I was overreacting. If I had let myself believe the signs, maybe things would have turned out differently. Long story short, Greg and Stephanie's marriage ended in a nasty divorce. Despite the overwhelming evidence Stephanie had of his infidelity, Greg refused to admit any guilt. Instead of owning up to his mistakes, he chose to lash out, deflecting the blame entirely. He started telling anyone who would listen that Stephanie was just a gold digger who had married him for his looks and money, rather than acknowledging that he was the one who had destroyed their relationship. Whenever I tried to bring up the topic of why he had cheated in the first place, Greg would shut me down immediately. He would get angry and dismissive and would tell me that being married to the same person for years was boring and that I'd understand one day if I ever went through it myself. It was frustrating and disheartening to hear him talk like this about Stephanie. During the divorce proceedings, Greg lost almost half of his assets to Stephanie and was also ordered to pay child support. This only fueled his bitterness, and he spiraled further into his self-destructive habits. As a result, his behavior became even more increasingly erratic. He started drinking heavily, and most nights he would show up at my house, completely blacked out from alcohol, only to crash on my couch. He would often tell me how much he hated sleeping alone in that big house, the same house that once felt like a home when he was with Stephanie and their child. Now, it was just a hollow reminder of everything he had lost due to his own foolishness. I wanted to help him see the truth, to encourage him to take responsibility, but he was too deep in his own bitterness and regret to listen. All I could do was continue to be there for him, even as I watched him struggle with the fallout of his decisions. The divorce really changed Greg in ways that I never could have anticipated. He was never the same after that. His behavior became increasingly reckless and self-destructive. He started sleeping around much more, and skipping work, and whenever we were out in public, he would openly ogle women without any shame. What really started to bother me, though, was that he would sometimes almost unconsciously flirt with my girlfriend, Chloe, right in front of my face. At first, I tried to brush it off since Greg had always been a bit of a flirt. I convinced myself that this was just a phase he was going through as he dealt with the fallout from his divorce. But the more I observed, I started to notice how Chloe would blush during their conversations, giggling like a schoolgirl whenever Greg made a comment or joked with her. I knew my brother well. I was absolutely certain he would never cross the line with my girlfriend. That was something I felt I could trust him on completely. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe's reactions to him were more than just friendly. She seemed almost giddy around him, and it started to gnaw at me. I decided that I couldn't just sit on these feelings any longer, so I had another conversation with Chloe. This time, I was more direct. I told her that if she continued to behave inappropriately around Greg, I would have no choice but to break up with her. I made it clear that my brother would never betray me, so if there was going to be a problem, it would be between her and me. I wasn't going to let her actions create a rift between me and Greg. My words seemed to scare her, and she immediately apologized. She told me that she never realized her behavior around Greg was inappropriate and promised that she would be more careful in the future. Chloe assured me that she had never meant to make me feel uncomfortable or disrespected, and she seemed genuinely remorseful. At the time, her apology eased my worries somewhat, and I wanted to believe that things would go back to normal. To her credit, after our conversation, Chloe did make a noticeable effort to reduce her interactions with Greg. She no longer engaged in one-on-one banter with him, and I could see that she was genuinely trying to respect the boundaries I had set. I appreciated her efforts, and over time, our relationship began to improve. The tension that had built up between us slowly dissipated, and I started to feel more confident about where we were heading. Earlier this year, when I proposed to Chloe, I believed it was the right decision for both of us. We had been together for a long time, and marriage seemed like the natural next step. Chloe had no hesitation in saying yes to my proposal. We started planning our wedding, and while I was excited about our future together, I did notice a few things that were odd. Throughout the wedding preparations, Chloe was always more subdued than usual. She didn't display the enthusiasm that I thought brides usually would for their big day. I tried not to overthink it at first, chalking it up to her being an overthinker by nature. Still, her lack of excitement during the wedding planning lingered in the back of my mind, and I brought it up with her a few times. Each time, she reassured me that everything was fine, insisting that there was nothing to worry about and that she was just dealing with the usual pre-wedding jitters. However, there were moments when I found Chloe alone in the bathroom, crying. When I asked her about it, she would dismiss it, saying that the stress of planning the wedding was getting to her, but that she was okay. Her explanations never quite satisfied me, but I didn't push too hard, wanting to believe that she was just overwhelmed by everything that comes with being a bride. Meanwhile, my brother, Greg, was incredibly supportive of my upcoming wedding. He seemed genuinely happy for me and went out of his way to make sure everything was perfect for my big day. He even organized a grand bachelor party for me that he paid for, insisting that I needed to enjoy my last night as a single guy. We had a great time with our friends. Yesterday, I arrived at the wedding venue feeling confident that everything would go smoothly. I had been told that Chloe had arrived earlier and was in the bridal suite getting ready with her bridesmaids, so I didn't have any reason to worry. Greg, our friends, and I got dressed for the ceremony, and my parents came by to congratulate me. They were overjoyed that I was finally getting married, and seeing how happy everyone was for me added to the excitement of the day. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. When I saw Chloe for the first time in her wedding gown, walking towards me down the aisle, it felt like a dream. She looked absolutely stunning, and I could hardly believe that this beautiful woman was about to become my wife. It was a moment I'll never forget, and I was overwhelmed with emotion as we exchanged our vows. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the reception, and the party was in full swing. Chloe was smiling, but something about her smile seemed a bit off, almost as if it were forced. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was bothering her, so I kept checking in on her periodically while also mingling with our guests. Every time I asked if she was okay, she assured me that she was fine, but I couldn't help but notice her tension. In the middle of the celebration, Greg clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. He stood up to give a speech, talking about how proud and happy he was for me. He joked about how he couldn't wait to see miniature versions of me and Chloe running around, which got a laugh from the crowd. I turned to look at Chloe, expecting her to be smiling along with everyone else, but instead, she looked furious. Her eyes were locked on Greg, and she was staring daggers at him. I leaned in to ask her what was wrong, but she didn't say a word. She just kept her gaze fixed on Greg as he continued his speech. I started to feel uneasy, sensing that something wasn't right. As Greg wrapped up his toast, other guests then took turns congratulating us and offering their well wishes. Throughout all of this, Chloe remained silent, her only response being to drink more champagne. I knew she was a light drinker, and seeing her down glass after glass made me even more concerned. As the night went on, Chloe's father took the microphone to say a few words. He spoke warmly about how happy he was for us and how grateful he was to have me as his son-in-law. His words were kind and heartfelt, and I smiled, raising my glass in a toast. I then took the microphone from him to thank everyone for being there and for celebrating this special day with us. In the middle of my speech, Chloe suddenly snatched the microphone from my hand rudely. She got up from her seat, stumbling slightly, and I realized with a sinking feeling that she was really drunk. Concerned, I whispered to her, asking if she needed anything, but she just pushed me aside and began speaking into the microphone. She started with, "I know everyone here is celebrating me and Greg. I see everyone smiling and laughing, but I don't feel the same. I don't feel happy sitting next to this man." My heart sank as she pointed at me, and I could feel the eyes of every single guest turning toward me, their expressions shifting from joy to confusion and concern. Chloe continued, her voice shaking but determined. "For years, I have kept my mouth shut and hidden my feelings because I was told it was wrong for me to feel this way, but I can't keep up this act any longer." I was stunned, as were the rest of the guests, who looked around at each other, clearly unsure of what was happening. Then, Chloe turned to Greg, and what she said next felt like a knife to the heart. "I've been in love with Greg for years," she announced, her voice raw with emotion. "Even though I feel ashamed about it, I can't hide my love for him any longer." I turned to look at Greg, hoping this was some kind of sick joke, but the expression on his face was one of pure shock, mirroring my own disbelief. Chloe wasn't finished. She then turned to me to declare, "I am sorry, but I married you only as a consolation prize because I knew I could never have Greg." My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening, but all I could feel was a deep, overwhelming sense of betrayal. Before I could react, Chloe's father appeared behind us, and quickly snatched the microphone from Chloe, while some of her brothers rushed over to try to pull her away into a room so she could calm down. Chloe, however, was not done. She kept shouting Greg's name, her voice echoing through the hall as she struggled against her family. I stood there, utterly humiliated, unable to move or speak. Everything around me seemed to blur as the weight of what had just happened settled in. Greg and my parents rushed to my side, their faces full of concern and disbelief, as they asked me if I was okay. But all I could feel was numbness. The room had fallen into stunned silence, the festive atmosphere now replaced with awkwardness and discomfort. The woman I had just married, the one I had planned to spend the rest of my life with, had confessed in front of everyone that she loved my brother and that I was nothing more than a consolation prize to her. It felt like my world had come crashing down around me on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I immediately made the decision to call off the marriage right then and there. I announced in front of the shocked guests that I would be ending things with Chloe after what she had just confessed and would be canceling our honeymoon. I apologized to everyone for the scene, my voice shaking with a mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness. I couldn't bear to stay at the venue any longer, so I walked out and headed straight to the nearest bar. There, I drank heavily, trying to drown out the crushing weight of everything that had just happened. I woke up today nursing a brutal headache and found my phone flooded with missed calls and text messages from my family. My family, including Greg, had been trying to get in contact with me all night. They have expressed their concern and support for my decision to divorce Chloe. However, Chloe's family has a different perspective. Her father and brothers have tried to reach out to me, urging me to hear Chloe out and suggesting that her confession at the wedding was a fluke and that she was just too drunk. They are pushing for a chance to talk things over and to reconsider my decision to divorce her. But the messages from Chloe's mother have me reeling. Her mother has argued that as much as she is embarrassed after what her daughter has done, she believes that Chloe's confession wouldn't have happened if there wasn't some truth to it, suggesting that my wife's feelings for Greg are genuine. What is more shocking is that she even has the audacity to suggest that I should give Chloe and Greg a chance by allowing them to go on the honeymoon I had booked so that they both can see if there is a real connection between them. I almost want to vomit after reading this message. Ida, if I proceed with divorce from Chloe? Update 1. I've received a lot of messages and comments regarding this situation, so I want to clarify a few things to address all of your doubts. First, no, my brother hasn't betrayed me. If he had been involved in anything inappropriate with Chloe, she would have definitely mentioned it at the wedding. This situation is clearly one-sided. It's Chloe who has feelings for my brother, and my brother has clearly never reciprocated. Secondly, I've spoken with Greg as well regarding this, and he has expressed deep remorse for everything that's happened. He has assured me repeatedly that he would never betray me like this. Yes, I'm aware of his past infidelity with his ex-wife, which is a serious concern, but I know he would never do this to me in a million years. Update 2. A few days after the fiasco, I finally had a chance to have a conversation with Chloe alone. She looked utterly miserable when we met, her face streaked with tears. I tried to remain composed in front of her and firmly told her that I was moving forward with the divorce and that there was nothing that she could say or do to change my mind. Chloe nodded in understanding and apologized repeatedly, expressing regret for calling me a consolation prize. However, she never once apologized for her declaration of love for Greg. Instead, she admitted that she had developed feelings for my brother over the years but knew that even if she had confessed to him, he would have never crossed the line. Hence, to stay close to him, she continued to maintain a relationship with me. Hearing this felt like she was stabbing my heart again with a knife. She continued to confirm that my brother had never done anything with her and asked if I could ever forgive her for everything. I just shook my head in anger and told her that her actions were unacceptable and that she disgusted me now. Following this conversation, I have blocked Chloe and her family. Fortunately, I have a prenup in place, so I know she won't be able to claim any alimony during the divorce. Update 3, it's been a few weeks since I last updated. For everyone asking, I'm doing well. Yes, I have continued to maintain a close relationship with my brother, despite all the speculations. I did have a more open conversation with him regarding all this where I asked if he would ever consider dating Chloe now that she was getting a divorce from me. He was immediately repulsed by the idea and made it clear that he would never date her, even if she hadn't been my girlfriend. My brother emphasized that Chloe is simply not his type and that it's delusional for her to have developed feelings for him. I also pointed out to him how he had sometimes flirted with Chloe in the past and Greg immediately apologized to me for his behavior. He told me that he had never noticed doing anything inappropriate, but that he would be more careful around my future partners from now on. Greg assured me that he loved me more than anyone else and would never do anything to hurt me. I believe him and I am grateful for the support of my family during this tough time. I think I'll be okay.